Hi, I'm Chocopopo, and I'm 1/3 of the writing team for the smash hit fanfiction. Welcome, Everything is Fine. By the way, if you can hear water splashing in the background, it's because I told my wife, like, hey, I'm about to record a spot. And they were like, cool, let me just go hop in the shower real quick. So that's where we're at in our relationship. I thought that it would be kind of fun to do a short little recorded spot, about a thing in a fanfiction. So as I said, I'm 1/3 of the writing team for Welcome Everything is Fine, and I'm also 100% of the writing team for any opera-related content that appears in that fic, because I like opera, and I want to talk about it. Who is Pont? Pont is a name that comes up a couple times in the world building of Welcome Everything is Fine, and it's not hugely important to the plot, but we are in the middle of a hiatus right now, so I figured I would just talk about him for a little bit. I thought it would be fun. Pont is Mozart. That's it. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. We decided very early on, like pre-chapter 1 planning, that we wanted to include opera in the world building at large to sort of distinguish the difference between upper class and lower class. If you've read the fic, which if you haven't, I'm going to put a link to it down here, I guess. I'll figure out how to do that, and I'll put a link down here. And also, I don't know why you're watching this. I feel like this has a very small audience of people who are interested in it. We wanted to convey the difference between Starscream and Ultra Magnus right away through the kind of art that they consume and the way that they view art. I actually initially posed that opera would exist entirely as a lower class standard of art, but we realized very quickly that first off, that's not really how art works. And second off, that's definitely not how opera works. Opera, in the classical sense of opera existing in a time when opera was commonly being created and there wasn't anything to compete with it, like how we have musicals now, which showed up in the late 20s, early 30s in like actual real life, and gave opera a run for its money, thereby dividing musicals into low-class music and operas into high-class music. But before musicals, there was low opera and high opera. We wanted to have Magnus be disinterested in opera, which shows up like literally in chapter 1, where he complains that opera is boring and long, because Magnus is only interacting with high opera. Operas that are 5 acts long, take 7 hours to sit through, are about rich people having petty problems, and the comedy is just that, like, isn't it funny that poor people are ridiculous and they're funny? You know that scene in Macbeth where the bursar or whoever, the drunk guy who opens the door, and there's this long scene where he's very drunk, and that's the whole joke, is he's a poor guy and he's poor and he's drunk and it's funny. Yeah, that's high art. We wanted to have this disconnect between Magnus being like, opera is terrible, I think opera is so boring, and Starscream, who is part of the proletariat and is being exposed to low art, which means that he is interacting with melodramas and comedies. Starscream has a really positive relationship with opera because he's used to seeing opera that has like a plot and things happening and like fun dick jokes and big puppets. And the way that I personally wanted to express that was to talk about Mozart. And now we get to the thing about Pont. Pont is named after the librettist Lorenzo da Ponte, who worked with Mozart on many of his operas, including The Marriage of Figaro, and then like 8 million that you've never heard of unless you're like a hardcore Mozart stan. And I wanted to talk specifically about 2 of Mozart's operas. In that scene where Starscream is at the opera house with Skywarp, they are watching The Magic Flute. So The Magic Flute is about a dude named Tamino. He is a prince, but he's a prince from like a foreign country, so he doesn't have any juice where he is right now. He goes hunting and he gets lost and he ends up in this like magical kingdom, and they're like, it's a magical kingdom, it's nowhere you've ever heard of before, but it's like straight up just Egypt. And he meets this member of royalty, the Queen of Night, and she's like, my daughter was kidnapped. I need you to go save her. I rescued you from this giant serpent, so you have to do what I say. And he's like, wow, you are royalty, so you must be telling me the truth. She's not. He goes on this journey, and then like halfway through, he meets the Queen of Night's daughter, and they fall in love immediately because it's not really about their relationship. We just need to know that they're fighting for each other, while also learning about Masonic principles. Magic Flute is weird. But Magic Flute is like a fun opera where like fun things are happening the whole time. Magic Flute is mostly done today by production houses that like have a puppetry department and want to do puppets, because the Magic Flute is set in a magical forest with tons of animals, so that poor drunk people who are sitting on the ground at like 8 p.m. at night, there's nothing else to do, drunk as hell, laughing their ass off at this dope bird puppet. However, Mozart also worked for the emperor, like personally worked for the emperor. Like he took commission work from members of the actual aristocracy. Mozart wasn't a member of the aristocracy himself, but he was pretty well off and pretty rich, and his family was rich and well off as well, which was why he had such intense musical training when he was so young. And I'm not going to talk about Mozart that much, I promise, but it is relevant because the other opera that I mentioned in passing, offhandedly, is The Marriage of Figaro. The Marriage of Figaro is about two poor people who try to dupe two rich people, and it doesn't work until they get the help of a rich people. And when the rich people help them dupe other rich people, then they can dupe the rich people. But mostly it's about like forgiveness and repairing your marriage, and the fact that the aristocracy should remember that they have a duty to their own servants and workers not to take advantage of them. Like, the plot of Marriage of Figaro is that a duke is trying to have like non-consensual sex with a woman who is getting married tomorrow. He's like, this is my last chance to sexually assault one of my workers. I gotta do it now. And she and her future husband are like, I would like that not to happen, please. So they have to go to the counts, or the dukes. Is he a count or a duke? He's a count. They go to the count's wife and they're like, hey, your husband is like trying to rape me. And she's like, I would like him not to do that because he vowed to not have sex with any other women while he was married to me. And like, that's the thing that's wrong with this situation. I feel like there are other things wrong with the situation, girl. But anyway, once she gets into the fray, once the countess gets into the fray, then they can condemn the count's behavior wholeheartedly. Before then, it's kind of like, well, but he is rich. Like, it is his right. Marriage of Figaro is weird. Weird, because it was based off of a play which was actually like specifically anti-French government at a time when France was getting ready to start beheading everyone in the government. And Mozart was like, I want to do an opera off that. And the emperor was like, you may not. And he was like, no, don't worry, I'll do a really non-political version. So Marriage of Figaro is a non-political version of a play inciting violence against the aristocracy. So a lot of the plot is very weird, and it goes into these weird cul-de-sacs, and it doesn't go anywhere because they took a play that was designed to take the piss out of the aristocracy and took all of the teeth out of it so that it would be appropriate for the aristocracy to watch and to enjoy. So there's this discussion of Ponte in this fan fiction. There's a conversation about whether or not his work can still be valuable to the poor now that Ponte, who used to write this sort of revolutionary and unique content that was for the poor and inciting the poor, is now getting commission from the aristocracy to take plays and stories that are about that, remove the teeth, and make them appropriate for aristocratic consumption. So that's what's going on with Ponte. And it's also what's going on with Ultra Magnus, who thinks that opera is dumb and weird and boring. Because the result of taking something political and removing all of the politics from it, but keeping the story, is that you get stories that are dumb and weird and boring. I like Marriage of Figaro. The music is really beautiful, but like, it is kind of weird how he wrote that, isn't it? It's kind of weird. Oh shit, I almost forgot. I actually stopped recording because I forgot. If you like this video, you should check out my Patreon. I have a Patreon, and I'm going to put the link down in the... here. I talk about Transformers sometimes, and then sometimes I talk about books or opera. I'm working on a video about opera right now, and why you probably don't like it, and why that's fine and not a judgment on you. I'm putting up a video about Beast Wars. That might be up there already. Wow, I'm really selling the hell out of this thing, aren't I? Oh, bonus points. The reason the magic flute is called the Trial of the Pyramids in Welcome Everything is Fine. The plot of the magic flute after the like inciting incident with the Queen of the Night is that to prove that Tamino is worthy of getting a girlfriend, not a joke, he has to go into the pyramids of, like, not specifically the pyramids of Giza, but it's like heavily implied that they're the pyramids of Giza, and pass tests. And the tests are dumb and stupid. They're like, look at your girlfriend, but don't say anything to her. It's like, what? First off, why couldn't they tell Pamina, his girlfriend Pamina, that he was going to be doing this test and she shouldn't try to speak to him while he's doing it because he's like proving his manhood worth of man so that he can become a mason. God, magic flute is weird. But also, like, how is that a test? You're just showing that you know how to not talk to a woman. Like, you don't have to be tested by the Masons to not talk to a woman. You just have to have a tiny bit of social anxiety. Also funny is that he gets a sidekick who's a bird or a man bird or some kind of bird man who gets very insulted if you mention that he looks like a bird. And his name is Papageno. And I believe I mentioned him by name because he rules. Papageno comes with Tamino and fails all the tests and gets a hot girlfriend anyway because he's nice.